So, Joker, Folie À Deux, recently came out, and reviews have been almost unanimously negative, at least from the vocal majority. Now, I'm not exaggerating when I say I think this is one of the best sequels ever made, and hands down, my favorite interpretation of the Joker. And if you'll indulge me, I'm sure I can get you to appreciate this movie just a bit more. But if you want to go in blind and give this movie a chance, here are a couple of points that I think could enhance your viewing experience before we get into spoiler territory. This movie was criticized for failing as a musical. It's not a typical musical, so don't go in expecting one. It uses the conventions of the musical genre, but the characters are not expressing themselves the way they do in musicals. Quite the opposite, actually, as I'll explain in depth later. But the musical aspect of it is essential to understanding the film, so don't write it off as a gimmick. When you watch the movie, pay attention to when the singing is bad. Joaquin Phoenix has some good numbers, and we know the man can sing, so it's on purpose that some songs are poorly performed. Pay attention to who encourages singing, and how other characters in the scene react to the initiative. Alright, with that out of the way, consider this your spoiler warning. There is no Joker. That's the pivotal point of this movie, and what felt as a betrayal for both the in-movie public as well as the audience watching. Arthur Fleck announces the Joker and what it means for him. From the very first animated scene of the movie, we're primed to expect a different solution to this conflict. How is a socially awkward loser like Arthur Fleck going to pull off becoming the prince of crime by the end of it? The movie starts off with a red herring, proposing that Arthur has a split personality disorder and that the Joker is the persona that comes out in moments of extreme trauma. The only person rooting for Arthur to get better is his lawyer/social worker, encouraging him to show his vulnerable side and share the trauma he's been through. Everybody else, including the audience, wants to see the Joker. This is best represented in the character of Lee Quinzel, who's the first person in 2 years with whom Arthur shares some of what he's gone through. After hearing her admiration for what he did as the Joker, he goes back to cracking jokes with the guards and later breaks out into the first live-action musical number of the movie, having heard that he's facing the death penalty just as he's met someone special. Now, I'm musically illiterate, so I can't really speak to anybody's singing technique or vocal range, but I can tell when the singing is bad on purpose. His performance as Arthur is underwhelming, and that's the point. Arthur can't sing. He admires music made by others, which is outright stated in his first interview with the psychiatrist and can be seen throughout the movie, but he can't genuinely express himself without it sounding awkward and out of place. Because Arthur is out of place, he's out of sync with social norms, and it shows every time he's trying to perform to their tune. But he tries to sing for them anyway, and every time he sings, it's either for Lee's eyes or for the public, never for himself. On the other hand, Lee Quinzel feels right at home with music. When she forces Arthur into a jailbreak singing "If My Friends Could See Me Now," he tries to follow along by dancing, not singing. Even as Joker, once he's put on the spotlight during the Gonna Build a Mountain number, he tap dances instead of joining the duet by singing. When Joker does sing, you can clearly tell the difference in the performance. It's no longer awkward, he's embracing norms and expectations placed on him by the public and by Lee, finally turning into what we've all been waiting for. And it's not healthy. It's keeping him from processing his trauma and expressing his feelings the way he experiences them. It's keeping him from forming true connection. That's why I said earlier the Joker is not a typical musical. In musicals, characters break out into song and dance to express their truest emotions. As Rob Marshall puts it, when movement isn't enough, you dance, or when speaking isn't enough, you sing. Neither his awkward attempt at singing nor his performance as Joker are genuine expressions of his character. In a sense, it's an anti-musical. It puts the burden of performing onto somebody who's not equipped to express themselves in that way. It may be a heartfelt expression for Lee, the prison guards, and even the other inmates who at one point or another show joy in singing, but for Arthur, it's always forced. He goes along with it because it's the only way he's shown he'll get reciprocity and the human connection he so desperately needs. And we've seen how badly he yearns for it throughout the previous movie, to the point of forming imaginary and parasocial relationships with both his neighbor, the Wayne family, as well as Murray Franklin and his show. And so Arthur goes along with it, leaning into the Joker persona and getting admiration for it. And just when you think the real Joker finally emerged, you're faced with an uncanny clown switching between a southern accent and a gangster, dropping the act whenever he's caught off script. Because even when he fully embraces the Joker, Arthur is really just trying to mimic character stereotypes from movies he's seen. Just like with music, Arthur can watch accepted patterns of behavior from afar, but when he tries to replicate them, it comes off as twisted. In trying to get approval from the public and from Lee, confusing praise with genuine connection, he alienates and hurts people he cares about. He plays into what others want, up until he's confronted with the repercussions of his act. We're shown throughout the trial that Arthur never means to hurt any of the people he cares about in his life. He gets upset when he's faced with the thought of being a bad influence on Lee, and especially when he's confronted with the aftermath of traumatizing his friend and co-worker. The Joker pretends like he's devoid of empathy, and this is the central conflict of the movie. All external forces are pushing him towards escapism into the Joker, personified by Lee, most of all. And that's not the conflict we were expecting from this movie. We were expecting the Joker to be the punchline. Instead, we got the man behind the joke. It's not that he decides to stop performing as the Joker because he gets abused by prison guards. What breaks the Joker persona is Arthur's realization that his act alienates him from others, perpetuating violence and abuse he's felt his whole life. That's the tipping point when Arthur owns up to everything, denouncing the Joker and embracing empathy in favor of the escapist spectacle. Hey, if the movie isn't meant to be interpreted at face value as a musical, how should it be interpreted? Well, I'm so glad you asked. If I had to pin a genre to it, it would be tragedy. Arthur's crimes are unwitting, and by the time he tries to set things right, he's fighting a force far greater than him, ultimately losing because he's going against the shared fantasy. Sorry, just a short tangent. This is my favorite moment from the movie, and it's so easy to miss. Early on, there's a scene that shows how much Arthur's crying looks like laughing, and I love how many layers that gives to the first movie in retrospect, where it was written off as a condition. In the last courtroom scene, while he's hearing the crimes he's committed read out loud, he starts crying. Somebody from the public mistakes his crying for laughter and tackles him, and if that's not relatable to all my neurodivergents out there, I don't know what is. Anyway, after denouncing Joker, he tries to win Lee back over with one more awkward attempt at singing, returning to those iconic stares to try a shot at genuine connection. It's funny, and I'm tired of pretending it's not. That was the culmination of the last movie. The culmination of this movie is more like, it's not funny, and I'm tired of pretending it is. He no longer wants to sing to somebody else's tune. He wants to be able to form a sincere relationship. But he's no longer allowed to. Maybe he never was. And if he was, he didn't know how. So he pretended. I mentioned before that Lee feels comfortable with singing. I was in two minds whether it's because for her, music is genuine expression, or whether she represents somebody who's too far gone and believing that's who she ought to be. I believe it's the latter. She serves as Arthur's foil, showing us what happens when you lose yourself in personas other people wanted to see in you. The reason for this is, when they're singing on stage for the first time and start arguing, it's her that says, it is about us, but we're singing for them. Not only has she fully lost her identity to this musical persona, she feels personally betrayed by Arthur's denouncement of the Joker, same way the audience feels betrayed by the movie they got. And so she declines his attempt at real connection. Arthur gets an unceremonious send-off, getting shanked to death for his crime. Not for his murders and the harm he's caused, but for the crime of not conforming and playing the part. The public wanted to see him turn into the sociopath Prince of Crime, as did the audience. And that's when we get to the meta aspect of this movie. His failure to partake in what others expected from him warranted punishment from the public, the same way tragic heroes face punishment for trying to go against their set destiny. Arthur in the movie shares a similar fate, getting attacked for not playing into the spectacle, for betraying the fantasy. When he gets stabbed, The onstage audience claps and cheers.
Oh, you know how it goes. You betray the shared folly. You get what you fucking deserve. You're the enemy foreshadowing the illusion. But you already knew that, didn't you, Todd? And you still went ahead with it.
The last song Arthur sings talks of a son he'll leave after he's gone. It might be a long shot, but I read this as the movie's swan song acknowledgement that future Jokers will follow. Batman needs a villain. Society wants anti-heroes that empower their fantasies, and all those who challenge the fantasy will face wrath. While Arthur came out of his internal conflict as his true self, the audience saw Todd Phillips' attempt at fighting spectacle with sincerity and decided to bestow the same fate onto the movie that the public did onto Arthur. If you build a mountain, that's the hill you'll die on, whether you like it or not. The first movie was criticized for relying too heavily on the homage aspects, taking beats from Taxi Driver and King of Comedy. This movie does its own thing. It takes a well-established genre of film, forces characters into that genre and its conventions, and uses the conventions, the medium itself, to tell a compelling story. It's not a mindless cash grab. It's not one more cog in the DCEU multiverse, and I think it's all the better for it. It's its own thing, and it's wonderfully crafted. It's the second act of a modern tragedy, and we, the audience, are left to play our part in Act 3. I'm not sure whether the nuance of this take on the Joker and the engagement required to interpret the movie were too much for the audience, or whether they understood the message but decided to keep pretending it's funny anyway. I hope that this love letter to Joker, Folie À Deux, got you to appreciate the movie a bit more, if not for what it did, and at least for how it did it. In the end, everybody was expecting this movie to sing, and instead, it spoke from its heart. There's your punchline.